Hello everyone, I'm here to tell you some scary stories, but in a way that helps you relax and fall asleep. If you enjoy these videos, don't forget to like and subscribe, it really helps a lot. Also, tell me in the comments where are you watching from and what time is it right now. Now take a deep breath, listen to the gentle sound of the rain, and let your mind drift into the dark, peaceful world of tonight's story. About 3 years ago, I met a girl online. Her name was Jude. At first, she seemed harmless enough. Her profile pictures were attractive, her smile easy and inviting, and her music taste was, well, niche, but I recognized a few bands. That was enough to catch my attention. We matched on a dating app, and our conversation started casually. Music, hobbies, shared interests. It was the kind of chat that felt easy at first. But then there was that subtle tension that gnawed at the edge of my mind. Something didn't sit right with her location. The app said she was in the middle of a massive forest, hundreds of miles across, nowhere near a city or town I recognized. I brushed it off at first. Maybe it was a technical error, I thought. She seemed normal enough on video calls. Her laughter was light, her face expressive. I should have noticed the little oddities. How she never mentioned neighbors, how she never had a phone line, how the background in her videos seemed just a bit too empty. After about 2 weeks of messaging, she suggested we meet. I don't have a car, she said, so I can't really come to you. I nodded, expecting a normal excuse. No problem. I don't mind driving. But when she sent a video of her home, it was strange. No driveway, no road, just a clearing in the forest, vaguely outlined by shadows of tall trees. I asked her how she got groceries or anything else. She just laughed and changed the subject. Eventually, she suggested I come to her town for the weekend. The idea made my stomach tighten. A whole town in the middle of the forest? It didn't make sense. I checked the map. Road stopped well before the heart of the forest. She insisted it was only a 4-hour hike from the last town. And somehow she expected me to go alone. I decided to bring my brother, Ethan, partly because I wasn't comfortable venturing that deep into a forest alone, and partly as an excuse to hang out with him. He agreed after some convincing, but his unease was palpable. The morning we left, fog hung low over the highway. Trees clawed at the edges of the road like blackened fingers, and even in daylight the forest looked thick, ancient and impenetrable. I called Jude as we drove. She said she and her brothers would meet us halfway to guide us. Ethan kept commenting on how weird everything was. Reception out here? No roads, what is this place? I tried to reassure him. Well, if it's a town, it's got power, right? And internet. People live somewhere, they figure it out. He didn't look convinced. By the time we arrived at the edge of the forest, my stomach was knotted. Fog rolled through the trees, hiding the path. We stocked up on snacks and water from the tiny local store. The old man behind the counter gave us a long, wary look. You boys heading to the ridge? He asked, voice low. The ridge? I repeated, unease creeping up my spine. Watch out for the locals, he muttered, barely audible. They're not as friendly as they seem. We ignored him, stepping into the forest. The trees grew taller, tighter, the light dimming as we went further in. Sounds of wildlife, rustling leaves, branches snapping underfoot. Everything felt amplified almost. Deliberate. After a couple of hours, we stumbled upon a torn white sheet splattered with what looked like blood. Ethan crouched, examining it. This is fucked, dude, he muttered. We pressed on. Streams cut across our path. Rocks jutted out like jagged teeth. And then, through the trees, we saw them. 2 older men and a young woman, Jude. She looked different from her photos, slightly younger, eyes unnervingly sunken. Thomas, she called, smiling. Relief washed over me, but it didn't reach my brother, who lagged behind, face pale, eyes wide. They led us deeper into the forest to a lake surrounded by small houses and a wooden church. The town felt alive but isolated, like a pocket of humanity hidden from the world. And as Jude guided us to her home, I noticed subtle signs that everything was... Wrong power lines? None. Vehicles? Rare. People moved silently, faces blank, smiles tight. And all the while, Jude seemed blissfully unaware or deliberately ignoring the oddities around her. That night, as I lay in her bedroom, moonlight painting the walls silver, I should have felt safe. But there was a heaviness in the air, a silent pressure pressing down. Something told me we were not alone, and something told me the forest, The town and even Jude herself were not what they seemed. The drive to the edge of the forest was quiet, except for the low hum of the engine and Ethan's occasional sighs. He kept glancing nervously at the dense trees on either side of the road, as if expecting them to reach out and grab the car. "You sure about this?" he asked for the 5th time, voice tight. "This forest, it's massive. We're not just hiking, we're walking into a trap." I laughed it off, but my own stomach churned. "It's a town, Ethan. There has to be people there. Roads, power, something." He wasn't convinced, and honestly, neither was I. The deeper we drove, the quieter the world became. Birds were absent. The wind barely moved the tree branches. It felt unnatural, like the forest itself was holding its breath, watching. When we finally reached the last stretch of road, the edge of civilization, the real hike began. Jude had promised a 4-hour trek, but even from the start it felt longer, heavier. The trail was barely more than a dirt path winding through ancient trees, roots twisting like veins, and fog clinging low to the forest floor. We moved carefully, bags slung over our shoulders. Every snap of a twig underfoot made Ethan flinch. "I'm telling you, something's off," he whispered. "Look at this." No signs, no trails. How does anyone navigate this without... I don't know. Getting lost forever? I didn't have an answer. All I could do was keep moving, pretending I wasn't terrified. An hour in, the first oddities appeared. A torn white sheet hung from a branch, drenched in dark stains that looked suspiciously like blood. Ethan crouched to examine it. "Holy shit, dude, this is not normal. Maybe it's just some hunting thing?" I suggested weakly, but my voice didn't carry conviction. The forest seemed to respond. The birds were silent. The air grew heavy. Shadows stretched unnaturally along the path, twisting as if alive. We stumbled across an abandoned building in a small clearing. Its wood was splintered, windows shattered, the roof patched haphazardly with blue tarp. It looked like it had grown from the forest itself. "Let's just keep going," I muttered. Ethan didn't argue, but I caught him staring at it long after we passed, his jaw tight. Time became strange. The sun hung in the sky longer than it should have. Streams became wider, rocks sharper. Every step forward felt like a test of endurance. And then finally we saw them, 3 figures at the top of a hill. 2 enormous men in dirty overalls and Jude. Relief surged through me, but it was tempered by the unsettling aura around them. Jude looked wrong. Her eyes were deeper set than in her photos, her movements too smooth, too deliberate. "Thomas," she called, her voice a melody that didn't match the darkness around her. The brothers didn't move toward us immediately. They simply watched, arms hanging loosely like predators assessing prey. Ethan froze behind me, and I had to nudge him forward. When we reached them, Jude enveloped me in a hug. She smelled of lavender and something metallic I couldn't place. It should have been comforting. It wasn't. She gestured to the town, a small collection of houses and a wooden church surrounding a lake. "About 20 minutes from here," she said brightly. I forced a smile. It looked quaint from afar, almost storybook. But the shadows, the silence, and the way the townspeople seemed to move as a single organism told me it was anything but safe. Ethan trailed behind, every instinct screaming for him to turn back. I wanted to too. But curiosity, a foolish need to see what Jude's world looked like, pushed us forward. By the time we reached her house, my arms ached, my legs trembled, and my heart was hammering against my ribs. And yet the strangest part was how normal it looked inside. Modern furniture, clean walls, everything untouched by the forest outside. It should have been a relief. Instead, it made my skin crawl, because I knew that what lay outside, what waited beyond those walls, was watching, calculating, waiting. The town looked harmless at first glance. Small cabins dotted along the lake, a neat wooden church looming in the distance, children laughing somewhere far away, the kind of place you'd expect on a postcard. But the air felt wrong, thick, almost oily, and carrying a faint metallic tang. Ethan stayed close to me, eyes darting at every passerby. "Do you feel that?" he whispered. "The air. It's like it's watching us." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The way people moved, too synchronized, too deliberate, made every instinct in my body scream that something was deeply wrong. Jude led us to her house. From the outside, it looked like any well-kept suburban home. Inside, it was immaculate, modern furniture, A massive flat-screen TV, soft couches, but the photographs on the walls, they were unsettling. Jude with her father, posing with groups of townsfolk, all smiles, all eerily similar expressions. Almost blank, she gestured upstairs. "You'll stay here," she said, opening a door. The room was small, bare, and the painting on the wall made me shiver. A woman, face half hidden, eyes unnaturally wide, staring without blinking. Ethan immediately noticed the second painting in his room, yellowed and distorted, depicting two figures in a hospital corridor, faces obscured, lit by sickly light. "This town is fucked, Tom," he muttered. Dinner was quiet. Jude's father, Dan, was imposing, tall, muscular, and calm in a way that unnerved me. He smiled at us, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You must be Thomas," he said, his grip firm when we shook hands. "And Ethan." The conversation was normal on the surface, but every word carried a hidden weight. He asked about our beliefs, our families, our thoughts, as if testing the boundaries of our minds. Jude was bright and playful, but there were moments when her cheerfulness vanished, replaced by something sharp, calculating. After dinner, she suggested a walk. I hesitated, glancing at Ethan, but he shrugged, resigned. We left the house together. The forest greeted us like a predator waiting to pounce, fog curling around the trees, shadows twisting. When we reached the clearing with the massive wooden statue, I froze. Hundreds of feet of forest away, I could see movement, figures emerging, robes fluttering, the scent of smoke from unseen fires. Jude didn't blink. Her eyes were fixed on the statue, and there was a hum, almost a vibration in the air. Something about her stance made my stomach twist. She wasn't just admiring the statue, she was part of it, connected in a way that made me want to turn and run. "We should go home now," she finally said, without meeting my eyes. Relief coursed through me. The town seemed to shift as we walked back. Shadows moved against the walls. From the corner of my eye, figures stood, watching us, faces half hidden, expressions blank. Children played in ways that were too precise. Adults spoke in synchronized tones, small smiles that didn't reach their eyes. Back at the house, Ethan and I watched from the bedroom window as the church lit up in red, chanting seeping through the walls. "This isn't just a religion," he whispered. "It's something else." I wanted to protest, to grab him and leave, but my curiosity, my obsession with understanding Jude's world, rooted me to the spot. Then came the knock. Jude's voice soft, coaxing. "Dinner will be ready soon. Someone wants to meet you." Ethan's eyes widened. "Who the hell wants to meet us?" "We don't belong here." I hesitated, torn between logic and fear. The night had only begun, and I already felt the weight of the town pressing down, its gaze invisible but undeniable. The sun hadn't fully risen, but the glow of the red light from the church spilled into the yard, washing everything in an ominous hue. I could hear chanting even before reaching the doors, low droning, the sound vibrating through my chest. Ethan's grip on my arm was tight. "We shouldn't be here," he whispered. His voice trembled, but he didn't pull away. "This is fucked. This isn't religion, it's something else." We stepped inside. The air was thick, heavy with incense, smoke, and something metallic like iron. The red glow came from candles lining the altar, hundreds of them, arranged in perfect concentric circles. Shadows leapt across the stained glass windows, distorted figures moving in sync with the chants. Dan stood at the front, calm and commanding. His presence radiated control, the kind that made everyone in the room stiffen. He glanced at Ethan and me, eyes cold, calculating. "Welcome," he said. His voice echoed off the wooden beams. "You're here to witness." "To understand." "To join," I froze. Ethan's hand tightened on mine. He whispered, "They're going to recruit him." Or us. Jude was nowhere to be seen. My pulse quickened. The chanting intensified, now accompanied by the rhythmic thud of drums. I scanned the room, trying to take in the figures. They weren't ordinary townsfolk. Their faces were masked, painted, hidden beneath hoods. Even the children wore small animal-like masks, distorted and unsettling. Dan's voice cut through the noise. "This is our sacred ceremony. Those who are pure, those who are chosen, will stand with us." I looked down at Ethan, whose eyes were wide, pupils dilated. "Thomas, we can't do this." "We need to leave," he whispered, panicked. Before I could respond, a group of cloaked figures stepped forward, encircling a platform near the altar. On it lay someone. It took a moment for my brain to process. It was a figure, barely moving, bound and gagged. I felt bile rise in my throat. The chanting grew louder, a tidal wave of sound pressing against my chest. "Why are they doing this?" I whispered, my voice breaking. "They're offering, I don't know, some kind of devotion," Ethan replied, shaking his head. "But it's wrong. It's all wrong." Dan raised his hands. The chanting abruptly stopped. Silence fell like a weight on the room. He looked directly at us. "The new witness." "Stand forward." Ethan froze. My stomach dropped. I could feel every eye in the room turning toward us. So I swallowed hard, trying to stay calm. One of the masked figures approached, extending a hand. The oversized rabbit head, it had been the little girl outside, stood there silently, eyes hollow and fixed on me. My body wanted to recoil, to run, but my feet felt nailed to the ground. "She will guide you," Dan said. "She sees all. She knows all." The rabbit-headed girl tilted her head, silently gesturing for me to come closer. My legs moved without permission. Every step was agony. Every heartbeat screamed danger. As I neared the platform, the bound figure moaned softly. Recognition hit me. It was a man from the town, a volunteer maybe, but his fear radiated like a physical force. The chanting resumed, but slower, deliberate, hypnotic. I realized then, this wasn't just a cult. It was a living, breathing organism. Every person, every child, every mask, every chant, it fed off the fear, the tension, the submission. Jude appeared suddenly, standing beside the rabbit-headed girl. Her expression was blank, almost robotic. She raised a hand pointing toward Ethan. "No," I whispered, voice trembling. "You can't. He doesn't belong here." Dan's gaze shifted to me, piercing, and I felt my knees weaken. "You are here," he said, voice low, "because you sought knowledge, because you are chosen." I could see it in Ethan's eyes. He understood the depth of our peril. "We're not chosen," he hissed. "We're trapped. We need to leave now." And then the bonfires outside, the ones I had seen earlier, ignited a surge of red light through the stained glass. Shadows danced violently on the walls, merging with the chanting, the drums, the ritual. My vision blurred. My chest burned with a need to run, yet my legs remained unsteady, caught in invisible threads of fear. Jude's hand touched my arm lightly, cold, mechanical. She leaned close. "You wanted to see the truth," she whispered, voice distant, almost unhuman. "Do you?" Every instinct screamed, "Yes, no, run, stay." Chaos collided in my mind. I glanced at Ethan. His grip tightened, nails digging into my wrist. I realized the truth. We were no longer visitors. We were part of this now, whether we wanted to be or not. The chanting grew deafening. The rabbit-headed girl stepped onto the platform, closer to the bound figure. My eyes widened as I saw movement in the shadows. Hundreds of figures, silent, observing, waiting, hungry for participation, for submission. And then Dan spoke again. "Tonight you witness, tomorrow you choose. There is no turning back." The chanting reverberated in my chest like a drum of iron. Every heartbeat felt amplified, hammering against my ribs. I glanced at Ethan, who had a pale, rigid expression, fingers gripping the edge of the pew so tightly his knuckles were white. Dan's eyes locked onto mine again, sharp and unyielding. "Witnesses," he said, voice calm but filled with menace. "Step forward." The rabbit-headed girl moved gracefully to the edge of the platform, extending a small skeletal hand. Her painted eyes seemed to pierce my mind, reading every fear, every thought I desperately tried to hide. I felt frozen. My feet refused to obey. The bound figure on the platform moaned again, a soft, desperate sound that twisted my stomach. It wasn't just the ritual that was horrifying. It was the anticipation, the unknown, the quiet promise that something unimaginable would happen next. Ethan whispered, low and urgent. "Thomas, don't let them separate us. Don't go alone." But before I could respond, the rabbit-headed girl reached for me. A strange magnetic force seemed to pull me forward. I stumbled onto the platform, the wood creaking beneath my weight. Dan's voice echoed through the church. "Fear is the key. Acceptance is the door." The chanting slowed, almost deliberate, each syllable measured and heavy. My pulse raced as I scanned the crowd. Every mask, every shadow, every hidden face watched us. It wasn't curiosity, it was hunger. Jude stepped beside me. Her expression was serene, almost cold. "This is your path," she whispered. Her fingers brushed mine, icy, almost skeletal. "Will you walk it?" I swallowed hard, feeling sweat trickle down my spine. I don't want this," I stammered. Dan's gaze never left me. "You do not choose. The ridge chooses. And tonight it has chosen you," the bound figure cried out suddenly, thrashing. But the crowd remained motionless. It was terrifying in its stillness, like witnessing life suspended in some unnatural balance. Ethan's voice broke through the haze. "Thomas, no. Step back." I froze, torn between the magnetic pull of the ritual and the desperate need to protect my brother. The rabbit-headed girl's hand lingered near mine, hesitant, almost pleading. Suddenly a cold wind swept through the church, snuffing out many of the candles. Shadows danced wildly on the walls. The chanting became a chaotic cacophony, voices overlapping, breaking rhythm. Dan raised a hand. Silence fell, heavy and suffocating. He walked slowly toward the platform, every step deliberate, commanding. "The ridge does not forgive hesitation," he said, voice low and dangerous. "Tonight you witness. Tomorrow you will choose." I looked down at the bound figure. Recognition hit. It wasn't just any volunteer. It was a man from the town, someone who had tried to escape before. His wide, terrified eyes locked onto mine. I felt a chill that went straight to my bones. The rabbit-headed girl finally pressed my hand to the bound figure's chest. The moment her fingers touched him, a shock ran through my body. Images flashed behind my eyes. The forest, the town, the bonfires, the sacrifices, all converging into one horrifying vision. I stumbled back, gasping for breath. The girl's voice whispered in my mind, soft but piercing. "Do not let them take him. Do not let them take yourself." Dan's voice cut sharply through the vision. "Time is fleeting. Decide now." The crowd began moving again, forming a tight circle around the platform. The red light from the candles and the morning sun created a blood-like glow. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to flee. But Ethan was still down there, and I couldn't leave him. Jude's eyes met mine. For a split second, I thought I saw her old warmth, the playful girl from the video calls. But it vanished instantly, replaced by the blank serenity of someone wholly absorbed into the ridge. The rabbit-headed girl stepped aside, motioning for Ethan to join me. He hesitated at first, then ran forward, breath ragged. We stood together on the platform, facing Dan and the crowd. The atmosphere thickened as if the air itself had become viscous. I realized then we were no longer visitors. We were part of the ridge's ritual now. The question wasn't if we'd survive, it was how we'd survive. Dan's smile curved slowly. "The initiation begins." The moment the words left Dan's mouth, the church seemed to breathe around us. The red light flickered violently, casting grotesque shadows on every surface. I glanced at Ethan. His face was pale, lips pressed tight, eyes wide with terror. The rabbit-headed girl stepped forward, her small hand guiding me closer to the bound figure. My stomach churned. I wanted to resist, to scream, but some unseen force pinned me in place. Suddenly, the church walls seemed to melt away. The floor beneath my feet turned into dark soil, slick with moisture, and the ceiling vanished into a black void. The bonfires from the forest flashed before my eyes. Then the hanging bodies swayed in a silent wind. I was no longer in the church. The rabbit-headed girl whispered almost tenderly. "See, understand, visions assaulted me. Faces of the townspeople, Jude's father, the brothers, the masked figures, all merged into a single, contorted mass. I saw sacrifices, blood-soaked rituals, but also strange moments of devotion, of life preserved in twisted ways. Each image hit my mind like a hammer. Ethan gasped beside me. "Thomas, what the fuck is happening?" I don't know," I shouted, voice shaking. It's showing me things." A cold hand gripped my shoulder. I spun, heart hammering, expecting the rabbit-headed girl, but it was Dan. His green eyes glimmered with something ancient, something cruel. "The ridge sees everything," he said calmly. Every thought, every fear, every betrayal, the visions intensified. I felt myself floating above the forest, seeing the ridge from above. I could see secret paths through the trees, hidden cabins and gatherings I hadn't even imagined. Every secret the town kept, the disappearances, the rituals, the sacrifices, was laid bare. And then I saw my brother. Ethan was suspended in a dark chamber beneath the town, surrounded by figures cloaked in shadow. They were chanting, preparing something terrifying, "No, Ethan," I screamed, trying to move toward him, but the floor of soil shattered beneath me. I fell into darkness. The rabbit-headed girl's voice cut through the chaos, calm and piercing. "You must choose. Fear will bind you. Courage will free you, but only if you act." I blinked and suddenly we were back on the platform. The bound figure groaned weakly at our feet, the red glow of the candles burning brighter than ever. Dan stepped closer, voice low and deadly. "The ridge tests all who enter. Do you understand your place?" I swallowed hard, my mind reeling. I want to save him. I'll do anything." Dan's lips curled into a thin smile. "Then the path begins." The rabbit-headed girl extended her hand again. This time I knew I had no choice. I grasped it, and the visions returned, sharper and faster, showing me the forest paths, the hidden town, and the rituals I would have to navigate to save Ethan. Somewhere deep in my chest, a fire ignited. Fear still clawed at me, but anger and determination now burned hotter. I would not fail, and I would save my brother. The visions faded, leaving me dizzy and gasping. The church was silent now, except for the soft crackle of candle flames and the faint chanting echoing from somewhere deep below. My legs shook. My hands were clammy. Ethan's absence gnawed at me. I turned to the rabbit-headed girl. Her painted eyes were unreadable, but there was something almost patient in her stance. She tilted her head, urging me forward. "Lead me to him," I said, voice raw. "Show me the way." She extended her hand again. Hesitantly, I grasped it, and she darted toward the door. The church seemed endless now, the halls twisting unnaturally. I stumbled over uneven steps that weren't there before. Each turn led deeper into shadows, into corridors that seemed alive, walls breathing. Finally, we reached a hidden staircase descending into darkness. The air grew colder with every step. My heart pounded so hard I thought it would give me away. "Stay close," she whispered. "Do not let them see you." I nodded, gripping her tiny hand as if it were a lifeline. We reached a heavy wooden door at the bottom of the stairs. It groaned when she pushed it open. Inside, faint light revealed a cavernous room carved into the earth. Shadows danced across the walls as torches flickered, revealing cages, dozens of them, lined up along the stone. Some were empty. Others held figures slumped over, murmuring prayers or cries. And there, Ethan. He was bound to a post in the center, the ropes cutting into his wrists. His eyes widened when he saw me. Relief and terror mingled in his gaze. "Tom," he rasped, voice weak. I don't know how much time we have." I clenched my jaw. "We're getting out, now." But the chanting returned, louder, closer. The shadows shifted. Figures cloaked in white robes emerged from the darkness, moving with unnerving precision. Dan appeared at the far end, arms raised, voice echoing like thunder. "You dare defy the ridge?" I froze. My mind raced. Weapons? None. Allies? Only the rabbit-headed girl, and even she was a mystery. She squeezed my hand. "Trust me." "Follow my lead," I nodded. The first figure lunged. We ran. Torchlight splashed against stone, illuminating more cages, more horrors. The smell of burning incense and something metallic filled the air. I grabbed Ethan's ropes and started yanking. "Keep moving." I shouted. The rabbit-headed girl darted ahead, opening doors and creating small distractions, shadows that sent the robed figures stumbling. But for every step we gained, the chanting grew louder, almost screaming, like the ridge itself was alive and hunting us. We reached a narrow tunnel leading upward. I helped Ethan crawl through, my muscles straining. Behind us, Dan's voice bellowed, commanding the cultists with terrifying authority. Finally, the tunnel ended at a hidden exit. The forest air hit us like a wave. Moonlight poured through the canopy, cool and sweet. "We're not safe yet," the rabbit-headed girl warned. "The ridge watches. You must leave the town entirely." I grabbed Ethan's hand. "Then let's go." No more delays. As we sprinted into the forest, the sounds of pursuit echoed behind us. The chanting, the heavy footsteps, the low growl of something unholy. My lungs burned. My legs ached. But determination overrode fear. The ridge would not claim my brother. Not today. The forest was alive with whispers, though no wind moved the leaves. Shadows seemed to stretch unnaturally, curling around the trunks, slithering across the undergrowth. Every snap of a twig made me jump. Every distant rustle sent Ethan stumbling. "Keep your head down," I hissed, dragging him along. "We don't stop for anything." Above us, the moon was just a sliver, barely illuminating the narrow trail we were forcing ourselves through. The rabbit-headed girl ran ahead, her oversized mask bobbing between the trees, sometimes disappearing into the darkness entirely. Suddenly, the chanting began again, not behind us, but all around. A circle of light appeared through the fog, a gathering of robed figures, torches flickering, encircling us. I froze. Ethan's grip on my arm tightened. "They're surrounding us," he gasped. The girl turned to me, silent for a moment. Then she pointed ahead. "There's a path through the ridge. Only one way." I had no choice. I sprinted, dragging Ethan after me. The ground was slick with moss, roots tangled underfoot, forcing me to leap over them. Behind us, I could hear the sound of footsteps pounding through the underbrush, unrelenting. A sudden flash of movement caught my eye, a figure perched high in a tree, its face hidden under a hood, long fingers gripping the branch. The way it moved, unnaturally fast and silent, made my stomach knot. I realized the ridge didn't just watch, it hunted. "Don't look at them," the girl whispered sharply. "Keep moving." I obeyed, though my gaze kept darting to the shadows, trying to memorize paths, escape routes, anything. Ethan stumbled over a fallen branch, and I yanked him up just as a shadow leapt across our path. We burst into a clearing, the first glimpse of open sky since leaving the church. But the moonlight revealed another horror. Hundreds of figures forming a lattice across the ridge, motionless, waiting. Their faces were hidden, but I could feel their eyes, hundreds of them, watching. The girl dashed forward. Through the gap. "Move now!" I pushed Ethan ahead, sprinting with every ounce of strength. Behind us, the chanting rose, echoing through the trees. The figures began to move, gliding with terrifying speed, closing the distance. My lungs screamed. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. I thought of all the warnings we had ignored, the strange town, the fog, the bonfires. Every instinct screamed at me to turn back, but I couldn't, not with Ethan at my side. Suddenly, the ground beneath me shifted, a hidden root or rock. I stumbled, sprawling forward. A hand grabbed my ankle, yanking me back. I spun around. A robed figure, face hidden in shadow, was dragging me into the forest. I kicked and twisted. Then the girl appeared, slamming into the figure, knocking it backward. "Go!" she screamed. I yanked Ethan to his feet. We ran again, following her into the deeper forest, branches clawing at our faces, roots threatening to trip us at every step. Behind us, the ridge howled, a sound unlike any wind or animal, a collective scream of hunger and malice. And somewhere, in the distance, I heard it, Dan's voice, low and furious, calling names we didn't recognize. But we didn't look back, not once. We crashed through the last line of dense trees and stumbled into a hollow tucked between two jagged hills. The air here was colder, sharper, like the forest itself was holding its breath. Moonlight filtered through the branches, illuminating a small stone structure half buried in moss, a cabin or maybe a chapel, ancient and forgotten. This is it," the girl whispered. "We can rest. For a little while." I glanced at Ethan. He was pale, shivering, but nodding. I could barely catch my own breath, my legs threatening to give out with every step. The girl led us inside. The air smelled damp, earthy, and faintly metallic. The floor was uneven stone, and thick cobwebs draped the corners. In the center of the room was a circle etched into the stone, symbols I didn't recognize, glowing faintly under the moonlight that leaked through cracks in the roof. "What is this place?" I asked, voice trembling. "It's a sanctuary," the girl said simply. "Safe from them." "From the ridge," I glanced at Ethan. "Safe? How?" "They cannot enter here. Not while the circle holds," she said, kneeling to touch the symbols. "But it won't last forever." A chill ran down my spine. "What do you mean?" Before she could answer, a faint scratching sound began at the doorway. Slowly, deliberately, shadows moved outside the cracked windows. I tensed, heart in my throat. "They're coming," she murmured. I grabbed Ethan's arm. "We have to do something." The girl stood, eyes blazing. "No, we wait. And when they enter..." Her voice dropped cold and deadly. "We run." The scratching grew louder, then turned into a thud, then a dragging sound. Figures pressed against the walls outside, moving in ways that shouldn't have been possible. Bodies bending, stretching, climbing impossibly fast. One of them spoke, a low rasp that echoed through the stone hollow. "You cannot hide. You belong to the ridge. I swallowed hard, feeling my stomach twist. Ethan clutched my arm, whispering, "I told you this was fucked. I told you we should have left." "I know," I whispered back. "Just hold on." The rabbit-headed girl moved to the edge of the circle. "You will have to trust me. No sudden moves. Do not step outside the circle." We watched in terrified silence as the shadows pressed closer. One hand, skeletal and pale, slid under the doorway. The symbol circle began to glow brighter, the air vibrating with a low hum. The shadow shrieked, recoiling. "They hate it," the girl said, her voice almost calm now. "They cannot cross this boundary." I exhaled shakily, leaning against the wall. But then another figure appeared, this one taller, more menacing, Dan. His eyes glowed faintly red in the darkness outside. "Thomas." "Ethan," he called, voice dripping with malice. "You belong to us now." The girl grabbed my arm. "Run when I say. Do not hesitate. Follow me." I looked at Ethan, who nodded, trembling. The shadows pressed harder, voices whispering, chanting, the ridge growing louder and angrier. My pulse roared in my ears. The rabbit-headed girl drew a deep breath. "Now!" We bolted, crashing through the back of the sanctuary, diving into the forest. Torches flickered in the distance, figures moving with deadly precision, chasing us again. Branches whipped across my face. Roots tore at my shoes. Behind us, the ridge's screeches pierced the night. We ran faster than I thought humanly possible. I had no idea where we were going, but the girl led the way, disappearing into a dense patch of undergrowth that somehow weaved us deeper into the forest. And then, for a heartbeat, I dared to hope. Maybe, just maybe, we weren't doomed yet. We stayed on the small island in the middle of the lake, shivering from the cold and adrenaline. The rabbit-headed girl, who I started calling Lila in my head, sat silently watching the water. Ethan broke the silence. "So, what the fuck is the ridge? Who are these people?" Lila's voice was low and deliberate. "The ridge is a bond, a covenant. They're not just a cult. They protect the forest, but they demand obedience. Anything outside the rules is punished." I felt my stomach twist. Obedience. Punished how? She didn't answer directly. Instead, she traced a finger along the muddy edge of the island, pointing to ripples in the water. "You've seen them. The hanging ones. Not dead, not alive, controlled." I swallowed hard. My gaze flicked back to the lake. The memory of the bodies suspended in midair, twitching in time with the chanting, came back. "Jesus." "They won't touch you here," Lila said softly, "but you can't stay. You have to go deeper into the forest, to the ridge's boundaries. There you might find a way to save your brother." Ethan shook his head. "No way. We're not going deeper. We almost didn't make it out alive." I clenched my fists. "We can't leave him. We have to go." Lila nodded, her expression unreadable beneath the mask. "Then we move at first light, and you listen to every word I say." At dawn, the fog was thick. The trees loomed like silent sentinels, and the air smelled of wet moss and decay. Lila led us through hidden paths, overgrown with roots and tangled vines. As we walked, she began to explain more about the ridge. "The town you visited. It's just a front, a place for the uninitiated. The church, the altar. It's where they choose the next member. Your brother." He caught their attention. I froze. "Why him?" "They sense fear, loyalty, trust. He's different, a potential recruit. Stronger than most," Ethan muttered. "This is insane. We're just some random guys who showed up." "Random," Lila said sharply. "Nothing is random here." The forest grew darker as we descended a hill. The trees began to close in, and the wind picked up, whispering unintelligible words. My heart raced. Shadows moved, but when I looked there was nothing, just the fog and gnarled trunks. Suddenly we stumbled upon another clearing. In the center was a stone altar, slick with dark stains. Around it were marks in the dirt, footprints, circles, symbols I couldn't recognize. "This is the boundary," Lila whispered. "Beyond here is the heart of the ridge. No one comes back unchanged." I looked at Ethan, who was pale, lips quivering. We have to go back." "We can't." "No," I said firmly. "Not without him." We crossed the boundary. Immediately the forest changed. The air felt heavier, the colors muted, and a strange, almost musical hum filled the air. Shapes flitted between trees, some human, some... Not Lila held our hands, guiding us through. "They can't see me as I am, not fully. They see only what they expect. We crept toward a massive hollow in the forest, where torches burned along a jagged cliff. In the center, I saw a large stone platform, and there my blood ran cold. Ethan's figure stood surrounded by masked members of the Ridge, chanting in a low monotone. "Thomas," a voice hissed. It was Dan stepping forward, mask in hand, face twisted with anger. "You shouldn't have come." I gritted my teeth. "Let him go." Dan laughed, a sound like cracking ice. "You have no idea what you've stepped into," Lila whispered. "Wait for my signal." "Don't move yet." The chanting intensified. The air grew thick with tension, almost like it could suffocate us. Ethan's eyes met mine. He was trapped but aware of me. His gaze screamed for help. Dan raised a ceremonial dagger, its blade glinting in torchlight. "This boy is next," he said. "The Ridge has chosen." I felt my stomach drop. Lila grabbed my arm. "Now!" We charged, ducking behind trees and throwing rocks to distract the cultists. Chaos erupted. The Ridge members scrambled, shouting orders, but the fog and shadows gave us cover. Ethan broke free from the circle, sprinting toward us. I grabbed his arm and we ran with Lila, weaving between torches and trees. Dan's voice cut through the chaos. "You cannot escape the Ridge. You will always belong to us." The forest itself seemed to push back. Branches whipped at us, roots snatched at our feet, but Lila guided us expertly, always one step ahead. We stumbled into a ravine, the wind howling around us. Torches flickered on the ridge above. "Ridge members, still in pursuit," I whispered. "We're not going to make it." Lila turned, eyes burning. "You will. You have to. Trust me." With a sudden movement, she leapt to a fallen tree, using it as a bridge over a rushing stream. Ethan and I followed, hearts hammering. We emerged from the forest into a small clearing, sunlight breaking through the fog for the first time in what felt like hours. The Ridge was behind us, their chants fading, but I could still feel their eyes watching. Ethan collapsed, trembling. We're alive." I pulled him close. "Yeah, we're alive, but we can't stop. Not until we're out of the forest completely." Lila watched us, mask in hand now, expression unreadable. "The Ridge will hunt you," she warned. "But for today, you're safe." Somewhere deep in the woods, a howl echoed. Not human, not animal. I swallowed hard, feeling the weight of what we'd seen. "We can't go back," I said. "Not ever." I've never posted anything like this before, and honestly, I'm not sure why I'm doing it now. Maybe I just need to get it off my chest, because it's been stuck in my head for years, gnawing at me in moments of silence, making me question what really happened that night. When I was 15, my parents both worked late shifts. My mom was a nurse at the hospital, and my dad ran a small auto repair shop downtown. That meant I spent a lot of evenings completely alone. It never really bothered me. In fact, I liked it. The house felt different when it was empty, quieter, freer, like it belonged just to me. I could blast music, stay up as late as I wanted, eat whatever I pleased without someone hovering over my shoulder. It was a rare kind of independence, the kind you don't really appreciate until you realize it was fleeting. We lived in an old house built sometime in the 1920s. From the outside, it had a certain charm. Tall, narrow windows, peeling paint in the corners, a wraparound porch that creaked underfoot. But inside, the house was alive in ways I didn't fully understand at the time. The floors groaned as if complaining about my weight. The walls settled with long, slow pops. Pipes whined, especially in winter, letting out squeals that sounded almost human. And the wind, when it got through the cracks, whispered in corners like a secret. All of it combined into a kind of low, constant hum, a background presence that never quite let you forget you were in a living, breathing house. That Friday night, my parents had gone to a late movie. They reminded me not to stay up too late, which made me laugh. "Yeah, sure," I said, shrugging, already anticipating my evening of solitude. I started in my room, headphones on, music drowning out everything else. My room was my sanctuary. Posters of bands I loved covered the walls. A stack of books teetered precariously on my nightstand. My laptop glowed faintly on the desk, open to a playlist I'd spent hours curating. The rest of the house was dark, shadows pooling in the corners, the kind of darkness that feels almost tactile, like it presses against your skin. I don't remember exactly what song was playing when I finally took the headphones off, but I remember the silence that followed. For a moment, it was so quiet it almost felt unnatural. The hum of the refrigerator was absent. The soft wind in the trees outside didn't reach my window. Even the old house seemed to hold its breath. And then I heard it. Thump. It came from downstairs. Not the sharp crack of a creaking floorboard, not the pop of an old pipe, a heavy, solid step. Someone was moving in my house. I froze, my chest tightening, my ears straining. Another step followed. Thump. It was deliberate, slow, careful, almost testing the air. Whoever it was, they weren't just wandering around, they were moving with purpose. Our living room was directly beneath my room. I could feel each step like a vibration in the floorboards under my bed. I tried to tell myself it was the house, settling as it always did, but something in the sound, its weight, its rhythm, told me otherwise. My hands shook as I grabbed my phone. I texted my mum. "Mum, are you home? Someone's in the house." Seconds passed. No reply. Then my phone buzzed. My stomach dropped. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. If it wasn't my parents, then who the hell was in my house? Before I could think to type again, a new sound started. Slow, wet, grating shh, like the sound of something heavy being dragged across the floor. It took a second to register. It was one of our oak dining chairs. I pictured it in my mind. A thick, heavy chair being pulled slowly, methodically, across the polished hardwood. The scrape seemed louder than it should have been, echoing up the walls, reverberating in my skull. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. My instincts screamed at me to run, but I was paralyzed. Finally, with a trembling hand, I locked my bedroom door and crawled into my closet, phone still clutched in my grip. My whisper was almost inaudible as I dialed 911. The operator's voice was calm, steady. "Stay on the line, stay quiet. Help is on the way. Don't make a sound." I pressed myself into the corner, barely breathing, listening to the house as though it had become a living enemy. Every faint creak, every sigh of the old walls made me flinch. Even the hum of my computer felt like a betrayal, a sound I could no longer trust. Then I heard it. The front door, someone banging against it. Hard, heavy, urgent. The dispatcher's voice returned through the phone, tight and clipped. "It's safe now. Police are here." I ran downstairs, stomach in my throat, and opened the door. 2 officers entered, flashlights cutting swathes of light through the darkness. They checked every room, every closet, the basement, the attic, even behind curtains. Nothing. No open doors, no broken windows, nothing stolen. When my parents returned home later, my dad scolded me. "It's an old house," he said, irritation in his voice. "You scared yourself. Ghost stories, YouTube videos. You let your imagination run wild." I wanted to believe him, I really did. But something in that night, something in the way the house had moved around me lingered. The next morning, I walked into the living room for breakfast, trying to shake the fear. The heavy oak chair, the one from the dining table, was no longer where it had been. It had been dragged into the middle of the living room, right under my bedroom, and it was turned to face the stairs. I couldn't explain it. I still can't. Even now, decades later, when the house creaks at night, my stomach drops like I'm 15 again, waiting for that sound to start all over. The morning after, I couldn't bring myself to sit at the dining table. My parents were already gone by the time I got up, leaving the kitchen in the familiar chaos of empty cereal boxes, unwashed mugs, and the faint smell of last night's takeout. I poured myself a bowl of cereal, but I couldn't eat. My eyes kept darting to the living room, to that chair sitting there, as if it had been waiting for me to notice. I tried to reason it out. Maybe my parents had moved it without thinking. Maybe I had imagined the dragging sound. But that didn't make sense. I would have noticed the chair being moved. It's heavy, it doesn't glide across hardwood silently. And the way it faced the stairs, positioned almost deliberately, it felt wrong. At school, I replayed the night over and over in my head. Every noise the house had made seemed to morph into footsteps, scrapes and whispers. I told myself to calm down, that it had to be some coincidence, some quirk of the old house. But every time I closed my eyes, I could see the shadow moving in the living room, the chair scraping across the floor. I tried to talk to a friend, but I couldn't get the words out properly. The whispering didn't stop. At first I tried to ignore it, telling myself it was the wind, the pipes, the house settling. But ignoring it only made it worse. It grew more deliberate, more distinct, almost like it was aware I was listening. Sometimes it came from the living room, sometimes from the stairs, sometimes from nowhere I could see. And always it carried that same faint weight, a presence behind it, watching. One afternoon when the sun was high and the house should have felt safe, I walked into the living room and froze. The oak chair had moved again, not just a few inches, it was now in the corner, tilted slightly, as if it had been pushed there carefully. I could almost feel the eyes that weren't there, the sense of awareness that clung to it. I took a step back. My stomach turned. My rational mind screamed at me, it's impossible. No one had been here. Yet the evidence stared at me like a challenge. Then the air changed. I could feel at first a cold draft that wasn't coming from the windows. My hair stood on end. The shadows in the corners seemed to shift subtly, growing darker, stretching longer, reaching toward me. The whispering returned, clearer this time, but still not words. Just a soft, raspy breath, like someone exhaling right behind me. I turned quickly. Nothing. I wanted to leave, to run outside into the sun, but something held me there. A mixture of fear, curiosity, and that unshakable sense that the house itself was alive, that it had allowed, or maybe even invited, this presence in over the next few days. The strange things escalated. The lights would flicker, briefly plunging rooms into darkness, even in the middle of the day. Objects shifted when I wasn't looking. Small things at first. A book moved from a shelf, a cup turned on the counter. Then larger items. The chair again, closer to the stairs than before. A blanket dragged to the center of the living room. Always deliberate, always staged, always watching. I tried to tell myself I was imagining it. I tried to rationalize. But the sensation of being observed, the pressure on my chest when I entered the living room, was impossible to ignore. It was like the house was breathing around me, aware of my presence, calculating how I would react. One night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed listening to the familiar groans and creaks when the whispering came again. This time it wasn't coming from the living room or the stairs. It was right next to my bed, just outside my door. I held my breath, heart hammering. The sound was soft but unmistakable, a deliberate, drawn-out sigh, almost human. And then a pause. I thought I heard a step, light, careful, moving across the floor outside my door. My blood ran cold. I didn't move. I couldn't. I watched the door handle, willing it not to turn, willing the shadows not to reach for me. And then the handle rattled. Just a little, enough to make me jump. I swear I could feel a presence press against my skin, cold, patient, intelligent. Not random, not a coincidence. It was aware I knew it was there. I whispered a prayer I hadn't said in years and slid under my blankets, trying to become invisible, trying to disappear in the dark. The whispering continued, just on the edge of perception, until I finally fell into a shallow, fitful sleep. When morning came, the chair was back in its usual spot in the middle of the living room, facing the stairs. But the carpet in front of it had faint, smudged marks. Not fingerprints, not shoes, something else. Something dragging itself. I didn't know what it was, but I knew it wasn't human, not entirely. And that realization changed everything. The house was no longer just a place I lived. It was a stage, and I was no longer the only actor. Something else was here, something patient, something that waited, and it had all the time in the world. Sleep became impossible. Every night I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, hearing the familiar creaks of the house and the soft, deliberate whispers that seemed to drift from nowhere. The darkness in my room was no longer comforting. It was heavy, almost physical, pressing down on my chest, curling around my limbs. I felt watched, judged, and most terrifying of all, hunted. It wasn't just the whispering anymore. Shadows began to behave strangely. I would glance at the corner of my room and see them stretching, shifting, pooling in ways the light couldn't explain. Once I swore one of them moved independently, sliding across the wall toward the door, reaching like a dark hand. My heart raced and I spun around, but the corner was empty. The shadows had snapped back to normal, leaving only the echo of fear in their place. During the day, the house betrayed me too. The temperature would change abruptly, warm spots shifting to icy patches, sometimes in patterns that seemed deliberate, like it was signaling me. I could feel it in my bones. This was no ordinary house, no ordinary haunting. It had awareness. It had intent. One evening I was walking through the living room when the chair moved again. Not a slow scrape this time. It slid across the floor in a flash, stopping directly under the stairs, facing me. I froze, unable to breathe. The whispers swirled around me like a living fog, and I thought I saw shapes, pale, almost human, but distorted, flickering in the corners of the room. I tried to rationalize. It's just my mind. You're imagining things, but even as I said it, the air seemed to tighten, pressing against my ears and chest, making my rational thoughts crumble. That night, I couldn't stay in my room. I fled to the kitchen, lights blazing, doors locked, sitting on the cold tile floor with my phone in hand. I scrolled aimlessly, pretending to read, trying to convince myself I was safe in the light. But the whispers followed. They seeped into the corners, curling around my chair, reaching for me. I heard a faint drag behind me. Slowly, deliberately. Something was moving in the shadows, closer and closer. My breath caught. I couldn't see it, couldn't make sense of it, but I could feel its weight, its patience. And then I realized it wasn't just in the house. It was the house. The walls themselves seemed to lean in. The floor groaned under pressure, even though I knew no one was there. And the whispers? They weren't random anymore. They were forming patterns, almost syllables, though I couldn't understand them. The air hummed with intent, alive with something ancient and malevolent. By the time my parents came home, I was shaking uncontrollably. I tried to explain, tried to tell them what was happening, but the words died in my throat. How could I describe a house that was alive? How could I make them understand the whispers that weren't whispers, the shadows that weren't shadows? I've never felt so powerless. Even now I can feel it. The house remembers. The chair, the whispers, the cold patches, and it all lingers. And I know that if I ever return there alone, I would find it waiting, watching, patient. The house isn't just a home anymore. It's a sentinel. And I am its prisoner. It never truly left. Even after the police found nothing, even after my parents dismissed it, even after years of moving away, the memory of that house clung to me. I sometimes wonder if it followed me, if it waits in dark corners wherever I go, patient and alive. The final night in that house started like any other, quiet, ordinary, the kind of silence that makes you feel safer than you are. I was 15, alone again, headphones off for once, letting the silence stretch, testing it. Then the thump came, not one, but two. Heavy, solid, deliberate, the kind of sound that makes your blood run cold. I froze. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but I couldn't. My bedroom door seemed miles away, the shadows curling along the walls like living things. And the whispering, and low now, almost a breath in my ear, it made my skin crawl. It knew I was listening. I called 911 again, just as I had that first night. The operator's voice was calm, comforting, but it couldn't reach me. I could feel the presence moving beneath the floorboards, closer than ever, pulling at the air around me. The chair scraped across the living room, closer, closer, until it was directly under my window. And then I saw it. Not a person. Not fully, just a shape. Dark, impossibly tall, with limbs that didn't bend right, standing beneath my bedroom window, watching, waiting. The whispers became voices, overlapping, unintelligible, insistent. And I understood. This wasn't just a ghost, a memory, or a figment of my imagination. It was older, smarter, patient. It had been here long before me. The officers arrived. Flashlights cut through the darkness, but it was gone. The house was empty again. No footprints. No broken locks. Nothing. But the chair had moved once more, now facing the stairs like it always did. I left that house the next morning and never returned. My parents sold it a few years later. I told them nothing about the last night.
How could I?
How could I describe something that was alive? Something patient. Something that waited for you to notice before showing itself. Even now, decades later, when I close my eyes at night, I hear the whispers, feel the drafts, sense the shadows stretching in impossible ways. Sometimes I dream of that oak chair, sliding slowly across the floor, stopping to face me. And I wake up with the same tight, cold feeling in my chest, the same certainty that somewhere, somehow, it's still there. I don't know if it's bound to that house, or if it can move with you. I don't want to find out. All I know is this: some places remember, some presences wait, and some chairs wait too. You just don't notice them until it's too late.